Hi, everybody. This is Bob Gale, co-creator of Back to the Future, and you're listening to Brad Gilmore.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
Doc! Okay, relax, Doc. It's me. It's Martin.
Oh, it can't be. Just sent you back to the future.
Yeah. Oh, I know you did send me back to the future, but I'm back. I'm back from the future.
Great Scott.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
Whoa, this is heavy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Back to the Future podcast, your podcast looking back in time. Great film trilogy of all time, Back to the Future. I'm your friend in time. My name is Brad Gilmore. Welcome to what I'm calling like a special preseason episode of Back to the Future, the podcast. Of course, we wrapped up season 10. We're moving on to season 11. And for a variety of reasons, 11 has always held a special place in my heart. The number 11 is very significant to my life, so I'm looking forward, great forward, to season 11 of Back to the Future, the podcast. So let's consider this a part of season 11 because it is very special. Today on the show, I'm going to be playing some interviews for you all, which I tend to do. Y'all, I think, have figured out that I do a lot of junkets. And for people who don't know, the junket is a very fascinating aspect of show business, in my opinion. And the reason I find it to be so fascinating is because it's like a very specific skill and muscle that you have to hone. Whereas like in most everything, you might see, like, let's say you watch the morning news on your local television station, wherever you're watching around the world. And you see the guy who is the anchor. And then you see the sports guy. Then you see the weather girl. Then you see the reporter out in the field. To the layman, they're all doing the same job. They're on TV talking about the news, right? That makes a lot of sense. That is what the job seems to be. But when you get into it, as when you get into anything, they all have a different purpose. The anchor keeps the show going. They literally anchor the show. They're the host that keeps the show perpetually moving. The sports guy is going to come in. He's got a very specific job. He's got to give you all the statistics within a certain amount of time. The weather person has a certain job, and different skills apply to the weather person. They're working off a green screen. They got to show you things on a map. They got to go to live footage. They got to explain to you what's going on. And a lot of the times it's the anchor's job to help guide that thinking. Well, hey, Bob, tell me about this front coming in this weekend. It prompts the anchor. The reporter has a completely different job. The reporter needs to literally report what's going on the scene. And again, the anchor needs to guide that conversation. So they all have different jobs, even though it feels the same. I say that to say this. What an interview is different depending upon the context and depending upon the format. So Marshall McLuhan is this great media and communications expert who had this phrase, the medium is the message. And it says, like, depending on how you're getting your information is how you perceive the information. So whether if you're trying to get your news from TikTok, who's ever presenting that news in TikTok has to do so in a certain fashion. They have a certain finite amount of seconds. If you're listening to a podcast, perhaps they can go deeper into a subject and take their time to lay it out. Or if they're on television, difference, right? So these are all different things. The junket is different from any other interview. Most interviews you do, it's like, hey, I'm going to talk to this guy or girl for 15 minutes about X, X, and X. Well, a junket, and that might be the only one that they do that day, but where a junket is, I am talking to somebody for a very short amount of time. Normally it's 5-6 minutes at the most, right? And they're going to be doing 50 of these today, right? and they're going to hit markets from all over the country.
I'm telling you, this
maybe
sale is
even
a
the
joke.
world, and you're going to have
Doc's
to
only been
figure
gone
out
for a few months,
how to
and
be
I happen to
engaging
know.
Well,
in
you
that
know him better than
5
I do,
minutes.
son. But the
And
bank
how
is
to ask
within its rights
questions
to
that
sell off his
are
stuff.
furthering the purpose of the interview, which is normally to promote a
Doc,
project of some kind. And
where
then
are
you
you?
also have to think about the perspective of how am I going to stand out from the pack?
You are well
How
aware
am I,
time travel is an
the
inherently
guy
risky
from
activity.
ESPN and
There's always the
CW,
possibility
how am I
that
going
could
to
land in
stand
trouble
out?
sometime.
You know,
Come to
from
my rescue
the
in the
guy from
past.
Chicago
Oh,
for the
this
Fox
is the
affiliate or
future.
the other Houston
Anyway, when
affiliate.
you get there,
or
I'm sure
this,
you'll
that, and
figure
the
out
other.
what to do.
So you try to figure
luck.
out ways to be engaged and ask those questions. It's a very specific thing. And then you're on a Zoom call 90% of the time, and you've got somebody in your chat box giving you time cues and telling you to rap, telling you to rap, telling you to rap. It can get a little bit hectic and frustrating and exhilarating and exciting. There's a lot of emotions in junket, but I'm learning. It's a very specific skill set that you have to master, and it's different from doing a radio interview or a sit-down television interview or a podcast like we do here. Why am I telling you this? Well, a couple months ago, must have been either late August or early September, I saw that they were starting to ramp up promotion and trailers for the new Robert Zemeckis movie here. And being a Back to the Future fan, being a Robert Zemeckis fan, I was excited for the movie. And I was like, man, I would love to be able to be a part of this junket. So I worked some back channels, talked to some people. Next thing you knew, I got a confirmation that you're going to be talking not only to Robert Zemeckis, which was the goal. I wanted to talk to Zemeckis. You're also going to talk to Paul Bettany, who people also might know as Vision from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then you're going to talk to Robin Wright, right, who you might know as Jenny from Forrest Gump or from The Princess Bride or House of Cards. Oh, and you're going to talk to Tom Hanks. And I was like, oh, okay, sweet. And I went and saw this movie here, and I have to tell you, I really, really loved this movie. It moved me emotionally. I found it both heartwarming and heart-wrenching. I found it both joyous and depressing at times. And it really played, and this might just be that Zemeckis and I share this fascination just with, I've thought about this too, and I've thought about it from a variety of different reasons, but like from the butterfly effect, like, okay, if my folks, didn't live here, if my grandparents didn't move here at this house, then my parents wouldn't have gotten the jobs that they got, they wouldn't have met, I wouldn't have been born, I wouldn't have gone to these schools, like there's all those things. And so the movie really touched me, and I thought it was excellent. And I was at a screening with a couple other members of the press, and we were all very thrilled by it. I'm a little bit surprised that it's gotten somewhat of a polarizing reaction because I found it to be fascinating. And I think that the craft of the filmmaking is fascinating. And I think Zemeckis and the whole team and all the actors did a great job. It's the best use of de-aging in any movie ever. I've never seen a better instance of de-aging than in this movie. And the stories all worked for me. And the singular camera angle worked for me. So if you have not seen Here, I strongly recommend it. It's my favorite movie of the year. I mean, that is legit, 100% honest. You know, and I know I'm a member of the Critics' Choice Association, so I will be voting for that movie and nominating it if I have the opportunity to. It'll be my first year doing so I'm not sure how it all works. But I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, Here was great, and I wanted to share with you all the interviews that I got to do for Here and all the people that I got to speak to right here on a special edition of Back to the Future, the podcast featuring the other father of time, Robert Zemeckis, Paul Bettany, Robin Wright, and Mr. Tom Hanks. Enjoy these junket interviews, and I'm looking forward to season 11 because I have huge news for you all coming up. I mean, this has been a banner year for me, by the way, guys. I mean, not only talking to Zemeckis, Leslie Zemeckis had a great interview with her, by the way, that I shared here on the show. Got to meet Chris Lloyd and Michael J. Fox in person. This has been a crazy year. And the Back to the Future 40th anniversary is around the corner. Some huge news coming out about that. But here we go. Here are my interviews with Robert Zemeckis, Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, and Paul Bettany for the lovely Movie here, which hold on, one more thing. By the way, this is the first time it's ever happened to me. I gave a quote about the movie, what I thought about it, to the studio, and they used it in a commercial. I was watching the news. Commercial comes up for here, an unforgettable experience. It's what I said, and it said Brad Gilmore, ESPN Radio, CW39 Houston. What is life? Crazy. First time that happens, it's on a Robert Zemeckis movie. Come on, man. Things are weird. Life is weird. Here are the interviews. Back to the Future, the podcast. Check it out.
Paul, thank you so much for taking the time today or this morning. I love this movie. It's been my absolute favorite film of the year. So congratulations on it. And thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you so much. It's good to hear.
There's this particular part in this movie with your character where he has this line that to me encapsulated a lot what the character was. And it's when he's looking off in the distance and he says, I've been to places. In that moment, I felt like I knew who he was. My grandfather being a World War II veteran himself, I felt like I knew this character. When you're breaking down a script and trying to understand who the person is, do you look for a particular line or a scene that could kind of really inform who that character might be for you?
No, but sometimes it happens. And you're right. That was one of the lines that really stuck with me. And and you know how small he has made his life now, and I think that, you know, having got back from having been a child of the Wall Street crash, you know, he then goes to war, he comes back and he decides he's going to build this family, and his life becomes about keeping a roof over their heads, I think. And I think that it leads him to sort of self-medicate with alcohol, and I do think it's a common story. I think we all know those people. I know that man in my life. I know him, and they're moving and incredibly human, and their flaws are sort of born out of just wanting everybody to be okay, you know, and yeah. So I'm really touched that you picked up on that line, because I think that's his sort of siren song.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and you're right. We all know those people at some point in their lives, but at the same time, he had solace towards the end of his, or he had a sense of completion toward the end of his life, because he did do the task. He did put the family through a roof over their head and got them through it.
He does,
all
and
the
then
way through his life. So in some senses, although it wasn't maybe the life that he wanted, he still did the goal. He accomplished the task, and I thought that was portrayed beautifully.
100%. And then he's looking after his wife, which is the soldier's last mission, I think, in this case, you know.
Absolutely. Now, this movie obviously was so uniquely done, especially from the way that it was shot, from the singular angle. And doing some research on this, I understood that they had what I think you affectionately called as the Bettany Trench, due to your height having to kind of be able to stay in frame at all the times. What did you find as an actor were the challenges and conveniences of being in that single frame shot?
For me, as an actor, I think that the challenges were far outweighed by the freedom that you actually felt by knowing what the shot is and how you know what it's going to look like. You know what the scene's going to look like because there's no editorial. You know, there's nothing else to cut to. So it's going to be one of these takes that we do, and that was amazing. And negotiating with who's going to step into the close, who's holding the story, and who's going to be stepping into the camera for the close-up, and all of that stuff was fantastically fun and freeing. And you know, things like trenches or standing on I hardly ever have to stand on a lift because I'm stupidly tall. But all of that stuff is normal in movies anyway, you know.
Absolutely. Well, again, this movie I think is my favorite of the year, and you were excellent in it as well as the rest of the cast. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Mr. Zemeckis, a pleasure to speak to you. This movie is the best film of the year, my favorite movie of the year. You kind of painted a beautiful illustration to the phrase, "If these walls could talk." So congratulations.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
The cast from top to bottom is obviously phenomenal. From every actor, who even the ones who portrayed the inventor of the lazy boy to the woman who portrayed Mrs. Franklin in the past, as well as also Tom and Robin, who have such great performances. My question to you is, casting Tom and Robin, who you've worked with so many times before, a great benefit, not only knowing what they bring as actors, but you have a certain amount of trust in them to help carry out what is really a complex vision with this film?
Of course, trust is an important thing that you have to always have when you're in a director-actor relationship. So yes, having worked before with both of them many times and understanding their process was very helpful. But it's always wonderful to work with an actor that you have a shorthand with, and they know how I think and I know how they think, and it just makes our life easier, and it's great fun because we just enjoy working together.
Yeah, I think Tom mentioned something about the shorthand of the red dot. Like when red dot is said, you know that y'all are on the same page. Is that right?
Right. Well, that's a term I use to describe the point of a scene. When I'm talking to the cast and I say, okay, the reason we're doing this scene, and here's the red dot, and whatever it is the point of the scene is to show the audience finally that there's a gun in the drawer, right? So, that's what the red dot is we all have to know what the moment that the scene is driving toward that's going to propel the story to the next scene.
The way this movie is shot is obviously very unique, for the majority of the film being shot from a singular angle. I asked the actors what were some of the challenges and conveniences of working that way, but for you as a director, what were the bigger challenges and conveniences of having that single frame to fit the story in?
Well, the biggest challenge was not in actually doing it, but the biggest challenge was in making all the decisions ahead of time, because we knew that everything had to work perfectly within that one view. And so just deciding on the lens, for example, took months to make a decision on what the right lens size would be, and then the right height of the camera, and exactly what in the room, for example, when we're in the room, what exactly was gonna, what part of the room was gonna accommodate all scenes. So those were the big decisions, and those were the big challenges. Having worked all those out ahead of time, it made the actual shooting go quite smoothly.
And I imagine the blocking has to be so precise in this movie, just because, as it is in any movie, but in this one particularly because you're going through different time periods and different things are showing up in the same place. So I'm assuming there's a lot of wherewithal and thought had to go into the blocking of the scene.
Yes, and what we did is we did a lot of loose rehearsal. We went and we constructed a rudimentary set, and we put a video camera in there, and way before we started shooting, the actors and I would wander through this little environment and work out these scenes and get to a place where we all felt that, okay, this is good, where this person is going to be here and this character is going to be there, and so we worked it out, and we did a lot of what I'll call black box theater rehearsing, and then once we were shooting, we would refine it from that. So we had a pretty good idea of what we were going to do before we stepped on the set.
This is my last question for you, and again, thank you so much for your time. This film really resonated with me because my grandparents' home was really the core of our family. Every big event happened there. Every major life moment happened in that house. And when it was torn down, sadly, and sold, I actually had to go steal the house numbers from up top.
Oh, that's
just to
great.
have as a keepsake, which I actually keep on my desk here with me right now, the 1212. Right. And that's kind of the memory for me of the film. Do you have any particular keepsake from a special childhood home or place that you keep that help remind you of the memories?
I don't have parts of my house. No, I don't have those. But my house actually is still standing, the one I grew up in. I certainly have mementos and things like that. But yes, it's interesting. Every once in a while, I'll go on Google Maps and just see how the house is doing, what it looks like, and see if it's still standing.
Oh, beautiful. Well, the movie is beautiful, and it was such a great time talking to you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Tom, Robin, thank you so much for taking the time. Congratulations on this movie. It is truly my favorite film of the year. So congratulations to the two of you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, let's start here, though, because obviously y'all have worked together, and obviously you've worked together with Robert Zemeckis on a film before. Does that familiarity that you have develop some sort of shorthand on set that truly makes the process collaborative?
Yeah, this is your third time, right? Or fourth?
Fourth, I think.
Well, oh.
You did what, 6?
I've
have lost count.
I've
Not a few. Not a few.
We just try to get together every 7 years and say, "What do you got?
Yeah.
What do you got?" But it is. I mean, people say when it. I think the first conversation I had with Bob is a shorthand conversation.
Absolutely.
30 years ago, or
Yeah,
what it is.
hasn't changed.
No.
At all.
No.
And it is, even though we haven't hung out with each other personally for these years in between each film, it literally feels like going home for the holidays. We're like, oh, there's that family. It's so easy. Yes, we speak in code. We were making the same movie. Let's just talk about that for a second.
There you go.
That's a huge difference, is when you have 4 different visions and nobody's in sync. We're making the same movie.
We have, here's one of the things that we would say. We'd get together and try to, approach of something like that. And we'd all get so close that one of us could say, red dot. And red dot means we all understand what we're doing, we're doing in this scene. All right, and that goes back to, one of the first, when Bob would, well, we all got to understand we're making the same, we got to know what that red dot is. Every scene has a red dot. We got to know what that, so now we could just say, hey, Bob, red dot.
Red dot.
Yeah, red dot.
Yep.
We got it.
Copy that.
Red dot. Look, obviously also the way that this movie is shot is so unique, from the singular frame and from kind of the through the window perspective, if you will. What are the challenges, though, and conveniences as an actor that you have knowing what the frame is essentially for the entirety of the movie?
Wow. Well, one is we would go as many takes as possible, 17, 36, 42. But what's fabulous about that is you start at the beginning and you go all the way to the end, and then you weigh how that is, and then you get to just go back and do it again. And once you've got it, that's it. You don't have to go back and revisit.
No coverage. It's not like, we'll come back after lunch and get the mediums and the extreme close-up. You have to nail it in one take. So we would find, was that take too long? Got to pick up the pace. Where do we pick it up? Should we move closer to the lens? Mm-hmm. Bring ourselves into our own close-up to make more impact of this beat where there are no words of dialogue. So it was interesting to work that way. We were like, we're so spoiled, we don't want to go back to the conventional way of shooting.
It was liberating because in a weird way, we made the movie in real time, if that makes sense, right? We made the movie in 90-second increments or 2-minute increments. We didn't go back and have to start playing around with how long the scene really is. It lasted as long as we did it. And sometimes, 47 takes is a long time, in order to get to where he went to. But it was a luxury.
I'm sure it was. And again, like you said, the way that it's just outlined in the film and from beginning to end, it's such a beautiful movie. This movie was also very special to me because my grandparents' home was kind of the center of our family for so many decades. So much so that when we had to sell it eventually and the home was torn down, I had to steal the numbers on the house numbers. And I've actually set right here next to me for forever. These numbers have been sitting next to me as a reminder of that. Do you all have any physical keepsakes that you've gotten from a childhood home or a special place that encapsulates the memories in a similar way?
Scars. I have some scars that might cover. No, I moved around, man. If I don't. You had any?
Yeah, I got some scars too. Yeah.
That and telephone numbers in my head.
Right.
522-2234. That
no
was,
way. Was that your landline?
Yeah. That was a landline at the house I lived in Oakland. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, hey, but what's the house number? What was the house number that you lived in?
Oh, he's going to show us.
12-12.
Oh,
12-12.
12-12. That's a great number.
It's a good one. 12-12
Yeah.
Bonnie Bray. But again, I know I'm out of time. Tom, Robin, thank you so much for taking the time, and congratulations on the best movie of the year.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. 12-12.
Have a good one.
See, there you go.